Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Temte. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have David C. Martin joining us. David is MIT educated. He's a founder, creator, investor, advisor, coach, mentor, business buyer. And he found early success in his career at Oracle, SAP SuccessFactors, and SABA, also known as Cornerstone. David and I went to high school together, and I call him a dear friend. So welcome to the show, David.
Thank you, Andy. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Yeah, so we're going to talk mainly about your story today, and we'll tilt toward computing. We'll tilt toward wellness because you have a lot to do with helping others stay healthy mentally, physically, help guide them in their lives, in their life path. But before we get started, I ask all my guests this question. Since we'll be focusing on your story, tell us just the first part of your story.
Okay. So I grew up here in La Crosse, Wisconsin. At early age, I began selling. I sold seeds door to door. I sold bike-a-thons.
Yeah, we both sold seeds. Yes. Awesome.
For the prizes in the back of the magazine.
Yeah.
Did paper routes. And then at the age of 12, Radio Shack came out with its first public computer, and I wanted to learn how to program it. So my dad wouldn't buy me one, but I went into the local Radio Shack store, and the manager said, "You can sit here and program it because maybe someone will know what to do with it and buy it." And that created a job for myself. So from 12 to 19, I was an independent contractor programming, mainly for the train company. Child
labor laws were a little looser back then.
Yeah, a little looser. And I got to learn how to file my own self-employment taxes at age 12 as well. And then sold a program to calculate commissions to a discount brokerage firm at 17, and then decided I wanted to figure out how to build computers, went off to MIT to learn electrical engineering, worked 2 summers at it, realized it wasn't for me, too much sitting behind the lab bench, not knowing what was going on in the market and the business. Went to Oracle for 9 years straight out of MIT, another enterprise software company that didn't make it later, got acquired by SAP, another one that I helped take public in 2000. It was the last company to go public as the market was crashing. And then 2002, took what I thought was going to be a year off that really became the rest of my life off so that I could be around my daughters and traded stocks and options and invested in companies, angel through to VC, advised companies, and then eventually learned how to buy companies.
Yeah,
and that's part of what I'm doing now.
Yeah, so a lot of people think of the Midwest as the flyover, and that not a lot happens in towns like La Crosse. One of the key reasons that I wanted to have you on the show is I really wanted to amplify your voice, your story, and show people that really interesting things are happening in communities all around the country. So yes, New York and LA are the gravitational centers of the country, but you don't have to be from there to really do cool and interesting things. And while I was trying to be a rock star at 17 and even younger, you're sitting in a Radio Shack learning how to compute. Is just a fast. And remember, to our listeners, this, he's talking about 1975, 1976. This was, computing was an absolute oddity. Many of us were sitting at home playing Pong.
Absolutely. I wrote Pong as a little computer, just a program as a test. But, La Crosse, like you said, town of 50,000 then, still now, roughly.
Yep.
You deserve a lot of credit for where La Crosse is today. There were not a lot of opportunities in a lot of industries, so I did need to leave. It was a great place to grow up. But today, thanks to you and others like you, I could have stayed.
Yeah. Well, I also ask every guest this question. It's the rocket booster question. you've had, I'm sure, many moments in your life that have been accelerant moments. Like you're 1 month you're here, and then wow, this happened, and here I go. I'm sure you've had many of them, but what is there one that just really sticks out to you that you can share with our listeners?
There is. It was as I graduated MIT, knowing I didn't want to do what I had a degree in, electrical engineering, and I pursued management consulting firms, figuring at least I could jump around industries, find out what I might want to do. And late in that game, Oracle approached me to hire people from MIT and 4 other colleges. They were 1 month public when they started this. They were going to hire 40 of us, put us in a boot camp for 90 days and see what happened.
Nice.
It was an experiment. And they gave me 7 offers, all of which I turned down. And then Larry Ellison called me with an 8th offer to be basically an internal management consultant for him. And I decided to do that. And I'm not sure I had the conscious words for it, but I hired by going to work for a coach and a mentor. It really had an impact on my life with the breadth of his vision, the being surrounded by type A intelligent people, and just, being in that culture of everybody, anything's possible. We're just going for it.
Right. Yeah, that must have been so heady those days. We're going to talk about that, but let's start with your very early days working with computers. Your time at MIT. What was the attractant to you at age 12, between kind of 12 and 16? What was that driver? I was off being a silly boy, thinking that I was going to someday be a rock star. And
you are.
Sort of, but that dream kind of came true. But you started programming. What was the driver?
My dad was a mechanical engineer. We were always tearing apart stuff at home, working on it, the cars, the lawnmowers, whatever, remodeling the house. And I'd ended up at Radio Shack with their little kits and their diodes and the transistors, and, building different things, a solar tracker and other things. And so I was in Radio Shack a lot, and all of a sudden this computer showed up that had 4K of RAM and audio tape, as a drive, and a book on the wall on how to program in the basic programming language. Yeah. And I was a logical math-like thinker, and I'm like, that'd be sort of interesting. So I tried to get my dad to buy me a computer. He wouldn't, but he bought me the book on how to, program in BASIC. But I had nowhere to practice, so I made friends with the manager and sat there and programmed, in the store. To the point where he would close and I would keep programming for the next 3 hours while he was closing it up. And eventually he asked me to teach him how to program. But one of the things I programmed was for the Train company, an air conditioning manufacturer. And it was their monthly order report. And that ended up saving them a day and a half of a person's time a month and got me a job.
Yeah. So, you and I, we at the top of the show, we said we both sold seeds. Yeah. And you remember those magazines at the very back? They'd have these like flying personal helicopters can you imagine that we are there now? And, Joby's got basically an Uber style helicopter with, 8 motors on it. And you're going to be able to, fly across town, have somebody take, for a few $100s a seat. These are the things that we would dream about as boys.
Absolutely. I was tracking in Popular Science and Popular Mechanics a guy named Paul Mahler that at that time actually had VTOL cars. And he's still working on it to this day. Ended up moving out near where he lived in northern, California.
Yeah.
And he invented a whole new rotary engine to make them fly. But he was so focused on the aircraft, he missed some opportunities to monetize the engine, for example, and some other things.
Yeah.
So we are there.
So you did a little programming. How did your code get into the Train company? I mean, the Train company is a big proper company. Started right here in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Something that a lot of folks don't know. the global headquarters is the old building is literally right down the hill. I
drove past it to get here today.
How still in your teens, how did that connection happen?
So my dad worked there. And he was the one that's like, why don't you write this monthly order report that compares sales this month to last month to a year ago, et cetera. Because he had somebody doing it on a calculator and, everything.
A human computer.
Yeah, a human computer, Gladys was her name. And, why don't you see if you can do this? And when he did, it's like, oh, whoa, we need that. It's going to save Gladys a day and a half, a month, and we can do something else. So he went to buy a computer, this $500 or $1,000, whatever it was, 4K RAM computer, and he couldn't. He was a senior vice president trained, and he couldn't. He went to the CEO, and he couldn't. And finally, the board had to approve a $1,000 purchase of a personal computer because IBM owned the basement, and they were so terrified, even at this early stage, of their personal computer, that it required a board level approval. And then once they bought it, they realized they had no one to program it, but this 12-year-old knew how to program it. So I came in as an independent consultant to program it.
So what's the relationship between Train and IBM there?
So IBM was a summer job when I was at MIT. And so that was an electrical engineering job, basically up in Burlington, Vermont. And it was key. It was the first of 2 summer experiences that helped me realize I did not want to be an electrical engineer. I was working on a 64 megabyte memory card that we never had one work in its entirety during my summer there. But I asked, where was it going to market? And my boss couldn't tell me. His boss couldn't tell me. That boss couldn't tell me where it was going to end up in the marketplace, what it was going to be used for to improve people's lives. And I found that unsatisfying. So the next summer, I put myself in a 12-person R&D firm. 2 brothers ran it. The chief scientist helped me. I had 2 of my own products. I knew exactly where we're going to market. Chief scientist is the most brilliant I've probably met to this day. But I was more interested in watching the brothers now figure out how to grow this business. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of where I realized my mind was more attuned and my passions were more around business models and the impact on people.
Yeah. A lot of people, they go into engineering on the education side thinking, oh, I'm going to be an engineer. And then they get in and they don't like the core engineering career path itself. But I still tell folks, when you feel that attraction to engineering, go for it, get that education, because much like finance, there are so many ways that you can go. Economics and finance, people think, oh, I'm going to be trapped in econ and I'm never going to be able to get out. No, there are so many opportunities. Would you concur?
100%. I mean, if you look at the statistics today, unlike perhaps our fathers and our parents' eras, you have many career changes. You go to many different things. And in my case, what I learned in engineering was problem solving.
Yeah.
And the management consultants were not coming to campus. I cold called all of them. And they're like, oh, here's a problem solver who can pass the test if you're locked in a closet, how much gas is flowing in the United States, figure it out. You don't have any resources. Here's a problem solver with social skills. Now, that was the needle in the haystack at MIT, the social skills.
Right.
But after I cold call them and they all gave me offers, they started coming to campus and have been going to campus ever since.
Yeah.
Looking at MIT as a resource for problem solvers with social skills.
Yeah. So let's shift gears a little bit. Before we cut to a commercial break, I want to focus on Oracle. So you're there in the very early heady days of Oracle. What was it like to be around Larry Ellison at this time? Just this. We know Larry Ellison today as the guy who started Oracle, but that's like talking about George Lucas, 40 years after starting the Star Wars legacy. Mm-hmm. What was it like to be there in those early days?
So it started during the interview process. They had picked 5 colleges to get these 40 of us from, put us in a 19-day boot camp as an experiment. Boot camp started 3 months after they went public. And the interview process was every one of the candidates, us college graduates, interviewed with all 7 vice presidents and Larry. And I remember during my interview with Larry, he said, here we are, a $50 million company, 500 employees, that we were going to be $1 billion company in 4 years. And as I was evaluating the first 7 offers, which I declined, I'm like, that would be sort of fun to be around. I'm not sure what he's smoking,
Right?
but it'd be sort of fun to be around. And when he made me the 8th offer to come into work as a special assistant for him, being an internal management consultant, in 4 years we were 971 million, not a billion. Now, we also had to restate that because the CFO had never been a CFO before us, but it was still 917 after it got restated. So pretty close, shooting for the stars. We landed closer to the stars than the moon.
Yeah. What kind of, you and I are both, we talk about organizational structure and organizational health. What was it like what kind of organizational culture was being built then? What was it like to be in that environment?
So great question. So Larry valued individual contributors more than managers, and that had a lot to do with the culture. So there are A players all over the place, but not a lot of great managers.
So lots of accidental managers.
Yeah, a lot of accidental people promoted beyond their competency, and it wasn't until, as my understanding, years later, near the end of my 9-year career, that the gentleman Ray Lane came in to run the sales force, and Larry was still approving every hire over in the sales force, as he was throughout the whole company. Sure. I had to hold a candidate. It took a year and a half to get this candidate from where I said yes to where Larry said yes. And Ray said, you keep doing that, I'm leaving. And that was the first sort of break in leadership being able to get developed. Now, it brought a bunch of great, A players along the way, but that was the next transition that needed to happen.
Yeah. All right, David, we're going to take a really quick commercial break. We'll be right back with David C. Martin talking about his life story, and we're going to shift gears toward wellness and organizational health, things like that. So stay tuned.
Sounds good.
Hey, it's Andy here. I've got a new podcast I'd like to introduce you to, The Saturday Morning Muse. Start your weekend with me by exploring topics that span leadership, business management, education, and other musings that are designed to support your journey of personal and professional continuous improvement. Subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. And we're back with David C. Martin talking about his life and advice for anyone who wants to lead a more fulfilling life. So, David, before we get there, there's a couple more businesses that I want to focus on. Most of our listeners will know the name SAP. They will certainly know the name SuccessFactors. Almost, a lot of us have had to deal with SuccessFactors through the years from a human resources perspective. At my time at Kaplan, we used SuccessFactors, so I know and loathe the product well. Tell us about the wild, woolly early days of e-learning and HRIS systems and your time with SuccessFactors.
Great question. I came into that space from a practical, pragmatic perspective at Oracle after the first year and a half working for Larry, solving problems, and then another year or so being the product manager in the main database. I started doing startups and turnarounds inside Oracle.
Really?
And to most people, it sounds like, oh, that's easy work. Well, it turned out I didn't actually have any safety net. Pretty much every time I wanted to do a startup, a turnaround, Larry would say yes, and you can have no money and no people. So I had to find
standard story.
Yeah, right. Internal or external funding, and build the teams and what have you. And so, as Larry asked me to build the first industry specific application division, I looked around externally, looked at pharmaceutical and a bunch of other industries, and ended up settling on government education, not-for-profit accounting, which it turned out they had already started in. However, they just put a new cover page on the documentation and the software, and it didn't do accounting the proper way. But at the time I accepted the job, I had 15 people. By the couple of days later, I had 3. Happened to have the product managers, so the ones that I needed to tell me what the market actually needed. And then I rebuilt the team using external and internal funding, and ended up just for some reason writing across the top of a spreadsheet what roles do I need in the organization, and down the left, what people do I have, and where did I think they fit in the skills in that, and whether they were in the right seat or not, and where I had gaps, and then just started reorganizing and hiring to this matrix. And so as I left Oracle looking at different positions using headhunters, whatever, it turned out my girlfriend at the time met the CEO of SuccessFactors, the founder, on the beach out in Half Moon Bay. Nice. And introduced me, and I'm like, oh, I have a passion for this. Now I learned there's things called organizational development and other, terms around it. And there's a much more researched way to put it together. And so I that's why I went to SuccessFactors. It fit my skill set in enterprise software, but also my passion for people really being the most valuable asset in an organization.
Yeah. On the e-learning side, you've also dabbled there, more than dabbled. And I'm an educator, 22 years at Kaplan, et cetera. Built e-learning systems from the ground up with the help of loads of team members. What drew you to e-learning? And tell us a little bit about Sage.
Yeah. So from SuccessFactors, which, by the way, I'm the one that came up with that new name for the company. When I joined it, it was not that. I don't even remember what it was.
So SuccessFactors is your fault.
It's my fault on the name. I don't know about the software, but I was there for a couple of years. My oldest daughter was born. I had long decided I was going to take a paternity leave. When that happened, they were kind enough. They were small enough. They didn't legally have to, but they let me take a paternity leave. And during that time, an old colleague from Oracle had founded and started SABA software. And during my paternity leave, I joined the board. He wanted me to join the company. Like, nope, I'm going to stay with my daughter. But at the end of that, I ended up coming into the company, and his attraction to me was the talent management side of things, because they were planning to transition from an a learning management system into talent management and succession planning and all the rest of it. Sure. And I had more knowledge than many in the organization at that time, which was less than 10 people. Yeah. At that time. So I came into the learning management system, which was learning management for all kinds of systems. I helped get them some of their first largest clients, and we ended up serving Caterpillar and Ford and Wells Fargo as well, in managing all of their learning, which a component was e-learning. And so we had a couple of forays into e-learning, mainly partnering with Skillsoft and others at the time. You probably recognize some of these names. Your listeners may as well. And I also built a marketplace for learning, in particular e-learning, so that Ford could be sitting, for example, they were one of the early users of this, inside their learning management system with all the content they'd produced internally, all the instructor-led stuff. But then they were also using Skillsoft and others, and now they could just go click, 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 and it would show up inside their internal learning management system with all their own metrics, around it. So it was early days. The APIs weren't developed for connecting, e-learning in, and they were just, beginning to track what you can measure inside the e-learning in terms of the progress. They were just beginning to come up with personalizing the movement through an e-learning, module. Based on the student that's in it.
Let's talk technical debt for just a little bit, because you and I grew up in the 90s. Grew up from a professional perspective in the 90s. when, writing all of this stuff from scratch. We'd have technical teams that would write it, and all of a sudden, in companies like Kaplan, other large companies, even software that you bought from a third party like SuccessFactors, SABA, et cetera, you connect all that into the guts of whatever homegrown system you have, and all of a sudden, this big, beautiful, shiny thing that you just created is now technical debt.
Yep.
And it's 2024. And I bet I can look out here into the camera and find somebody who's watching or listening that's going, oh, yeah, we're still suffering from that technical debt. We've got a computer somewhere that still has an orange screen.
Yes.
What advice do you have for people that are coming up through the ranks right now to help them address the technical debt that's sitting in their organizations?
This is a balancing act of its own.
For sure.
Probably everyone flies. Probably everyone interacts with a bank. And the frustrations they have interacting with both those industries are because they're still running systems that were written in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. A large part of their infrastructure, they still are burdened by that technical debt. Yeah. And that's a balance, innovating in order to grab more market share, in order to serve more customers, in order to get more revenue, more profit is often the driver. And the cleanup, if you will, is sort of an afterthought. Amazon to the consumer is a really smooth process. But I've also been a seller on Amazon, and the spaghetti code is apparent.
Yeah.
I mean, here we are in 2024, and as a seller, you make an update to an image or a product title, and Amazon tells you it'll show up sometime between 24 and 48 hours for the consumer. It is like, what in the world? What? Technically, we have been past that since the 80s.
Right.
But, they, like many, have not gone back and done the cleanup. And that debt is, the interest payments, if you will, that you're making, if we want to compare it to, the
Sure.
national debt, are not as clear cut, but they're heavy.
Yeah.
Very heavy.
Yeah.
So it's its own balancing act that I'm not sure I have a simple solution for, other than to be very conscious about it and making decisions.
That was the point of me bringing it up. I'm teaching back at the University of Wisconsin La Crosse. I have bright-eyed 21, 22-year-olds who are going to go out and tackle the world. And, from an organizational health perspective, they're hoping that high school finally ends, and that and college finally ends, and all of the personal struggles and the inner dynamics, that somehow from an organizational health perspective, everything's going to get a lot better. Yeah. Sorry, it's not. And
unless you choose carefully and among a needle in a haystack.
Right. Yeah. Choose wisely. And then the other is this mindset that a lot of people have, that they're going to get out into the business world and the technology is all going to be smooth, and and processes are going to be all figured out, and I'm not going to have to apply creative energy to try and solve age-old problems that predate them by decades. And the message is, if that's the mindset that you have coming out, quote unquote, into the real world, I have David Martin sitting here, who started programming in 1975, and some of his code is probably still out there.
Yeah, most likely.
Absolutely. So let's shift gears to the current state of David C. Martin, your current endeavors. You've got Co-Create, you've got Wise People, all not spelled that way. It takes just a little bit to go, oh, Wise People, yes. Tell us about what you're up to right now.
So let me start with Wise People, because in 2015, I became conscious of my why, my purpose for being on the planet.
Excellent.
And in my experience, because I've helped other people do that too, when you become conscious of your why, you can often look back all the way to age 5 in your your whole life and realize it was always there, that there was a thread to it. And so in my case, my why I'm here on the planet is to make sure that every single person on the planet has an experience of having had a coach or a mentor that can help them, swing the bat, swing the club, and learn by doing, and also have had the experience of making money doing something they love instead of something they've got to do, during the week so that they can live what they love to do nights, weekends, and in retirement. So that became conscious for me. I made a shift in a business in October 2015. I then went off to a conference where Bob Proctor spoke, Tony Robbins spoke, Robert Kiyosaki spoke, Les Brown spoke, and it all just crystallized over the next few days. And again, I was still finding the words for it, but it's about everybody's why. Everybody does have a why. They don't necessarily know it, but there's something that fulfills them. And that to me is the key to unlocking everything, is help people find their why, help create, I see them as Venn diagrams. Here's your why, here's my why. In our case, there's quite a bit of overlap in those circles, and that creates a relationship. It creates 1 + 1 = 11, should we decide to, work together as well. And so that's really what I'm out here to do, is to help everybody find their circles, find their overlaps, find fulfillment, find coaches and mentors, find some money in that, so that hopefully in the time I have left, everyone's had the experience and then realize that they could actually organize their life around what they love to do and make money at it and be fulfilled at all times, not just nights, weekends, and retirement.
Yeah. And the thing, again, going back to younger generations, teaching the next generation, I have them go through my personal planning guidebook, and it's a continuous improvement exercise. It's got an A3 and all this. And the first question is, why do I exist? What is my purpose? And for a 21, 22-year-old, that can be a daunting, because you said you found yours in 2015. Yeah. And if I'm doing the math correctly, you're in your early 50s.
51, yeah.
So the point that I want our listeners to really focus in on is, yes, you want to ask that question. Why do I exist? What is my purpose? And if you don't find the answer right now, give yourself a little grace.
Oh, heck yes.
Because you don't have to find it right here, right now in this moment. Yes, maybe start a yoga practice, breathing, centering, meditation practice, so that you can get closer to your core and what makes you you, and cut out all of the noise, at least for a few minutes a day, and just be with you. And that's what really helped me find and put a name to my purpose, which is teach, coach, mentor, and cross my fingers, hopefully inspire a few folks along the way. But it was that ability to cut out all the noise, get all the chatter out of my head, and find and really start to tease apart those threads. Would you agree?
100%. And stepping away from the daily grind, hustle, focus, whatever it is, stuff is an important part of it. And those kinds of practices are good. There are, there's your guidebook. There's Simon Sinek, who, popularized
much more famous than
the why. And, his second book, Finding Your Why, is a practice two people can do together to help each other find them. Best if you don't know each other, so you don't go in with preconceived notions. Another colleague of mine has WHYS, WHYS.OS, which is another quick survey you can take that actually starts to get you pretty close. And so there are some frameworks, some tools beyond just a more general self-exploration, which is very useful, right? But to get you closer consciously to some words that I find that once I have some words around it, and then more importantly, I start speaking it,
Yeah.
And people give me feedback.
Yeah.
And that, David, that sounds like you. David, that doesn't sound like you. Oh yeah, clearly that's what's always driven you. When you go out and speak it into the world, you get the feedback, you get clarity.
Most importantly, David or Andy, you don't act that way.
Right.
So don't say those words unless you are going to act that way.
Because your why is authentic.
Right.
And if you're not acting that way, then that inauthenticity
Good job.
shows up. Took me a few tries.
So as we start to close out the show, let's talk wellness. You've got some individual, one of our listeners sitting right in front of you right now. They want to level up, develop, and maintain that heightened sense of well-being and purpose. What are two pieces of advice that you have for them?
For me, everything comes from mindset. That's what needs working on first. From that, everything can happen. Think and Grow Rich talks about you create it in your mind and it comes to be, in the world. And so if you want physical wellness, you got to create it in your mind first. And everything for me is about decisions and then consistent choices.
Yeah.
After that. And the choices being actions, not just choices of how you talk, but choices of, how you act as well. And so in my case, I do a lot of traveling. We're about to begin living around the world for the rest of our life next year, country to country to country, staying until we've learned the culture, feel like we've made a positive impact, go on, do it again in another country. And so around my physical wellness, I recognize that I'm always on the move. I'm not going to carry a lot of gear with me. So before I create a wellness habit, I ask myself, can I do this no matter whether I'm in a hotel, in another country, in whatever, is it portable, if you will? And I don't even attempt to spend the 21 or 30 days to create the habit unless I can see it fitting, my lifestyle.
Yeah. So I'm just parroting it back. Decision-making and habits.
Yes.
Would you, because I talk a lot about decision making. People go, "Oh, my life is off track. I'm just a mess." Well, let's go back and let's think about some of the decisions that you've made, because a series of a million decisions has led you here. You're a coder, so binary code, on, off. Let's not talk about quantum computing quite yet with a floater out there, but, on, off, yes, no, that's happening all day, every day. And I contend that you can predict the future based on your past activities and following this set of decisions, these binary decisions that you're making in every moment, because I'm pretty confident what's going to happen 5 minutes from now.
Yes.
Because we planned it, we made a decision.
More than predict it, that's what created it.
Right.
Those
Absolutely.
decisions create your future.
Yeah.
And they seem minor right now, but those little forks in the road, if you keep picking right, you're over here. If you keep picking left,
right,
you're over here for sure. I call them the key decisions are what I call the irrevocable decisions, the true commitments that then you're going to start making what to the rest of the world and yourself until you've made a habit out of it are hard choices.
Yeah.
Until they become those habits.
Cool. All right. Well, we're gonna start wrapping this show up. This has been so much fun. This is exactly how I had envisioned it in my head.
Yeah.
So little fun. I ask all my guests these questions. I give you access to a rudimentary time machine. You probably wrote it back in 1976. You can send a message to an earlier version of David Martin. What's the message? What previous version do you send it to?
So the previous version is when I did Oracle, my ERP days. I did Oracle, SuccessFactors, SABA, took it public, then took a year off. After that, what I did do was I went into investing and trading and that kind of stuff, which made money but wasn't fulfilling. So 2 years ago, I started to learn how to buy businesses. And so the message would be to me after that 1 year off, buy businesses instead of build them.
Yeah.
Because you've gotten through that 3 years, 95% of them disappear and fail. And at least for David Martin, I I can pour rocket fuel on anything, but it's better if there's some embers first in order to create that hypergrowth. I can create the embers, but it doesn't fulfill me as well.
Yeah.
And then all of that by a business that has the team in place, that has, the runway and the proven results that you can do something with. In my case, I know how to take things exponential from there.
Yeah, I sense that, trading and investing back then probably wasn't as fulfilling as it could have been because the people side of the equation was missing. But when you go to buy a business, there are carbon-based units that are associated with that. They think, they feel, they dream, and that's got to be much more fulfilling for you.
100%. Wall Street chased me at the end of my MIT career when I decided not to go electrical engineering. Like, no, I'm not going to sit in the basement doing spreadsheets. And in fact, that's later what I did when investing. But during that time of investing, 2 friends came to me and said, I want these businesses to grow. And that was Sage Online Learning was the first of those. I'm like, okay, I can apply my talents to get in and get to grow this, and then eventually to sell it to smart pros. And there were humans, absolutely.
Yeah.
That was the fulfillment.
Okay, second lightning round question. We're all works in progress. What are you working on right now to take David C. Martin to the next level?
It's very much related to my why. I'm making sure that I'm being coached, I'm being mentored, I'm learning, I'm growing my mindset, and then I'm turning around and contributing that to others that seek the same thing, that are sort of close enough to where I am that I can bring them along. And that's part of what I learned in this whole coaching and mentoring journey that I'm looking to systematize is we are best coached and mentored by someone that's about twice as far ahead of us in whatever the thing is. Because if they're 10 times ahead of us, we probably don't understand what they're saying.
Right.
And if they're 10 times below us, and I don't like using ahead and below because everyone belongs where they are and can be fulfilled where they are. But most of us are not Tony Robbins, who's a billionaire and can coach a broke mindset. That's a big leap for most coaches. So, coaching people that are about half where they can understand where the next step will stretch their mental rubber band, not snap it.
Right. Well, David, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you, my friend.
I'm just really we're going to go live in a different country for a year and make a difference and move on. It just sounds so interesting. So not me.
We're all different.
So all not me, but so you. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
Thank you for reconnecting today.
Proud of you as well, my friend. Thank you for this opportunity.
Excellent. Well, my name is Andy Tempty. This is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find us on all the major streaming services. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this public good with your friends. The show is produced by Nicholas Tempty, and we'll see you next time on The Balancing Act.